I'll recognize the Vice Chairman of the full committee, Mr. Armstrong, for his 5 minutes of questioning.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I am by no means an expert in this area. However, I think the second part of safety becomes really important. July 27, 2017, a year and a half before I came to Congress, this committee passed the Self-Drive Act by a vote of 54-0. Unfortunately, that bill died in the Senate, due largely in part to civil liability questions. And it's important because the most common personal injury case are vehicle accidents. In fact, they're 52% of all personal injury cases. And it's July of 2023, 6 years later, and we really haven't addressed those issues. We can address it from science, we can address it from safety, but the second part of that is when somebody gets injured, somebody gets sued. And which means the industry continues to operate without certainty, risking billions in capital and undermining U.S. leadership in this field. Perhaps one day, with the universal adoption of level 5 automation, we will have minimal auto accidents and injury. But the future may allow for a regime in which the current fault-orientated standards yield to a simplified product's liability. This is essentially what Rep. Dingell's draft states, that liability is assigned to the original automated driving system, or replacement automated driving system. However, in the near term, we will see a mix of highly autonomous vehicles and conventional vehicles. That means the current fault-orientated liability regime remains, but with increasing efforts to impose products liability claims against manufacturers of a highly autonomous vehicle. We have already seen warning defect claims and risk utility design defect claims with level 2 vehicles. But let's take a level 3 vehicle, conditional driving automation, and a driver actively monitoring and ready to take over. So the questions are, did the driver act reasonably in taking over the vehicle after an alert? Did the driver respond fast enough to take over the vehicle? Did an unanticipated hazard arise requiring a rapid response which did not provide adequate time for a driver to take over? How do we account for comparative and contributory negligence? And these are all going to be challenging questions for courts to consider regarding design risk, utility, and feasibility. And these issues will be even more challenging for juries as it will require reliance upon expert testimony about advanced automotive engineering. And maybe that is the answer. Leave it to a state-based tort claims law. Perhaps we adopt what some have called a manufacturer enterprise responsibility. This is basically a government compensation fund for those injured. It is financed by an upfront assessment on highly autonomous vehicle manufacturers and no liability on the back end. My question, and it'll be for you, Mr. Shapiro, what liability regime, if any, should we enact for level 3 and 4 vehicles, which allows the industry to mature and produce level 5 vehicles?
Well, thank you for the question, and I appreciate the level. I know you have a litigation background.
Yeah, I'm not nearly smart enough to talk about the science, but
no, I felt like I was
when a minivan goes off the road in Florida and 5 people are killed, somebody's getting sued.
I feel this is like my final exam question in law school. You raised the correct issues, absolutely. But the big picture is we got to get and make safer cars, given the carnage on the road. How do we get there? And how do we get there in a way which gets us there quicker? Because every year we get there quicker, we're saving lives and injuries and property damage. You didn't mention the 4.3 million car accidents we had in 2021 and all the costs that imposed on consumers and insurance rates. But right now, I think the federal arbitration standard is good because it basically makes the system much more efficient. It cuts down on the costs involved for all the parties involved. The consumers end up getting more money. The manufacturers may end up paying less, but the system works and there's no slippage through other people trying to make money off it. And the other thing is I think as we get more and more cars on the road, those problems dissipate. It doesn't wait till get to all level 5 everywhere. If we could get 90% of these car accidents out of the way, and as Secretary Buttigieg said, that even if we get AVs reduce 50% of lives, they're still going to be criticized. So we have to also get the public to expect there are going to be issues. What do you do if someone's intentionally has an accident with an AV? What do you do if they're throwing rocks and breaking things? What do you do in different situations? And I think these are areas for discussion, but I don't think Congress has to resolve those today because there's a state tort system which is set up and can resolve them on a state-by-state basis. And if Congress has to then step in, it will step in. But meanwhile, insurance will go down in rates for most consumers, especially if they have self-driving cars.
So I think the science and the technology will get you there, and I think in the totality, you are absolutely 100% correct. But in order to have a commercially viable automobile, you have to have insurance on it. And if you think Congress moves slow, if I can't walk into any car dealership anywhere in the country and buy a car that I can get insured, then we run the real risk of the technology far outpacing the policy. Because I agree on the abstract, it's going to be safer, but each one of these individual cases is still going to be subject to a plaintiff's lawyer, an insurance company, and a defense lawyer. And until we figure that out, unfortunately, this is just a science project.
Well, I won't speak for the insurance industry, but I'd be shocked if they're not willing to have a lower insurance rate for self-driving cars.
Gentleman yields back. Now recognize my fellow Florida Gator. I think something